So today, I'm going to be talking about Vue.js internationalization and mastering i18 for user-centric web applications. So what will be covered, we'll be talking about what i18 is, the importance of it, and how to implement it in our Vue applications. So who is this guy? Like Kenneth said, my name is JD Hillen. I'm a software engineer at Garmin in Kansas City. So if you ever get in Kansas City, come on by. I have 3 philosophies in life. My 3 philosophies are code, coffee, and metal. Like Kenneth said, I was in a metal band for a long time. I was actually outside rocking out the Tool before that's my pump up music before my talks. So if you saw me like rocking my head back and forth and like doing double bass with my head, I'm not crazy. I was just in the zone. And then also my website down here, links.jdhillen.com. The slides are available there. So if you have any questions there, also all my social media is on there. I'm at JD Hillen on everything. Please stalk me. I enjoy the stalkers. So a little story. Back in 1996, I was 13 years old. I went to the CD store. CD stores, for those that don't know, they used to put music on physical discs, and then you used to put them in players to actually listen to them. But I was searching through the discs, and I found this disc. And back in the day, when I was 13, there were only 2 bands that were in existence to me, and they were Metallica and Megadeth. That's it. That's all my purview allowed me to see, was just those 2 bands. And I saw on this CD, this X Games CD, that Megadeth had a song on there. So I bought it. And little did I know, this CD would really kind of change the course of my musical life. It had other bands on there, like Primus. Any Primus fans? Couple? I saw them like a week and a half ago. They were awesome. They had one of the first singles by Korn for Blind. They also had Faith No More's Epic. I'm a big Mike Patton fan. Yeah. Woo! But the song that really got me on this CD was a song by Sepultura. Does anybody know who Sepultura is? Couple people? Good. The song is called Rada Mahada, and the song is actually in Portuguese. The band Sepultura is actually from Brazil. They speak Portuguese, and I had no idea what these people were saying. Absolutely no idea. I was just completely lost. All I knew was this song was hard, it was heavy, and it had just all kinds of emotion in it. And just as music brings together different notes and melodies to create harmony, i18n combines various languages, translations, and cultural elements to create a harmonious experience for users from diverse linguistic backgrounds. So what is i18n? I've said that a couple times. So i18n is actually a numeronym. A numeronym is basically numbers that stand for letters. As you can see here, we have I, then 18 stands for the internationalization part, and then N on the end. Some other numeronyms, ally, we say ally, but some people say A18Y. Everybody says ally though, because the ones look like L's, which stands for accessibility. 911 is actually a numeronym, stands for help. 24/7 is a numeronym, which stands for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So i18n stands for internationalization, right? Internationalization is a way of developing and easily adapting to different languages, regions, and cultural conventions with your application. And at the end of the day, it's all about the end user. So some of the key concepts of i18n is locale. So locale is a set of parameters that define the user's language, region, and cultural preferences. It includes components such as language code, which is the first part of it, which for English is just EN. And then our country code, which is the second part of that equation, which is US for the United States. Translation. So translation involves converting text of our web application into one or many languages with maintaining meaning and content. This process ensures that users can access content in their preferred language, improving accessibility and user experience. Localization, which actually localization is another numeronym, which is i18n, is the process of adapting software, websites, and products to meet the linguistic, cultural, and technical requirements for a specific locale. It involves translating content, adjusting formats, dates, currencies, things like that, and modifying visuals to align with local conventions. And lastly, we have frameworks and tools. So frameworks and tools, we have lots of different frameworks and tools out there to support internationalization and be able to implement internationalization into our web applications. And I will go over one of them, which is one of my favorites. So why use i18n? First off, you're catering to a global audience. You're not just limiting yourself to English-speaking companies or English-speaking users. We have better user experience and accessibility. This is actually an accessibility issue, which I will talk about in a minute. And it also streamlines the development process by pre-baking this internationalization into your app, just in case you need to use it later. So why does i18n matter that much? Well, in January 2024, the world population was a little over 8 billion people. And you can see by this chart, the primary languages used on the internet as of January 2020 are English, which makes up about 25.9%. And second place is Chinese, which is 19.4%. And they all kind of trickle down from there. But you can see at the very bottom where it says rest of languages. That doesn't, include German, Russian, Japanese, French. This includes all the other languages that you're actually missing out on developing your content for. And also, more than half of those people have access to content on the internet and apps. And that number is just drastically increasing. I'm actually in a conversation with my wife right now on why we should or shouldn't get my 11-year-old son a phone who turns 12 in July. Kids are getting access to the internet faster and faster every year. And also, like I said, it's an accessibility issue. So if you're into accessibility, I'm not going to talk about what the actual accessibility is, but if you are interested in accessibility, I call these the 4 horsemen of accessibility. This is my buddy Todd Libby, my friend Homer Gaines, my bro Krista Mars, and our very own Maria Lamardo. Follow these people. They have great information on accessibility. If you're new to accessibility, like I was about 2 years ago, these guys put out great content, and you'll definitely learn something from them. You can take pictures. So, how i18 works on a basic level. So first off, you have your location. And there are several ways to get your location, but primarily the main way to get your location is your IP address. The IP address detects the region of the user and allows them to access content in their regional language. However, the user's IP address does not necessarily match their language preferences. Moreover, location analysis prevents the sites from being crawled by search engines. So if you're using just based off of your IP address, you are detecting your location, but you're not necessarily providing the correct content for your consumers. The second way is the accept language headers. So the accept language headers is another possible approach to implement. However, this approach provides language information, but not regional information. So it doesn't check all the boxes. The last one is the identifier URLs. So you're differentiating your content by domains, which I'll show an example here in a minute. You're either that or URL parameters, or you're using localized subdirectories. So this is an example of how we're actually using these identifier URLs. So the first one is the domain. You can use suffixes or domain suffixes if you want. The Vue docs actually use a, what are they called? The URL, the one in the front. Good Lord. It's been a long day, hasn't it? You know what I'm talking about? Like that thing, you know? Anyway, then you have your URL parameters, which are usually query parameters at the end of it. Again, this is not good for search engines to crawl. And then you have localized subdirectories, which at Garmin, this is what we use in order to detect their language preferences. So based on that, this is the plugin that we're going to be talking about today. This is the Vue i18n internationalization plugin brought to you by Kazupan. He is a developer that does this and works on this project. He has great support in the Vue community, a lot of sponsors, and is actively developing this plugin. So, basic setup. Like everything else, we npm install it. And then we actually have to set it up. So in our main.js file, we create two things. First, right under where it says create app, we create the i18n object. And then down on the bottom, we tell app to use that i18 object. Then we start actually configuring our create i18n object. So first off, we have our locale. The locale right now is set to Japanese. And then we have a fallback locale for EN, which is English. And then under messages, we just have our different objects based on those languages. Now, you can set these to pretty much whatever kind of object structure you want to. Right now, it just says messages, hello. But you could just set that to a flat object with, 100 different translations in it, and it would still work. And let's take a look at that. So in order to implement that, we use the $T, and then in quotes, we have message.hello. So we're just using object notation for that. And then we end up with something like this. Very simple, right? But what if that's how you use it in our regular template, but what if we wanted to use it in the composition API? So one of the things that we have to do first is we have to go back to that create i18n object, and we have to add legacy false. And what this does is it allows us to use it in the composition API. So in order to use that in the composition API, in our script setup, we would import use i18n, and then we would set a const of t to use i18n. And then we would actually be able to use t.message.hello in whatever composition structure that we want to use. But notice how we drop the $T. So the $T is actually universal. We can use that without actually having to import anything in our template, which is pretty cool. So a couple of the things that we can do with our internationalization is pluralization and formatting. So handling plural forms in different languages is definitely a big issue. We can use date, time, and number formatting. And we can also do custom formatting. I'm not going to go over that, but I just want to show you a couple quick examples of handling some pluralization real quick. So right here, we have an object which is in English. We have car and cars. We have apple, which is no apples, one apple. And then we use this bracket count, squigglies count for apples. And so what that is that is actually our message format syntax. So when we create our objects in our template, we can actually pass messages down to the pluralization engine. And I'll show you an example. Right down there at the bottom on line 11, we have that count, right? So that count is the same as the previous screen count, and that's going to pass that number down to our object. And again, we're using $T because we're not importing anything into our script setup. So here's an example of what actually is rendered. So you have car, cars, no apple, 1 apple, 10 apples, right? Pretty simple to implement. All right, let's talk date time formatting, excuse me. So every region in the world has some kind of hinky date time formatting. right? And with the i18n Vue plugin, we're able to customize all of these dates without having to use like day.js or anybody still using moment.js, or has everybody moved off of that? No? No? One person? Liar. I'm just kidding. So what we can do is we can actually create these objects and have specific date time formatting for different scenarios. So we have short, long, and so on and so on. So here's how we would actually implement that. And notice how I'm not using $T anymore. I'm using $D. So $D, there are components built in to i18n Vue where you're actually using those components. And there's a completely different syntax. If this syntax isn't for you, you can actually import it in as a component and pass those values down to it, and it will generate the object. So for this, we're doing $T. We have a new date, and we're telling it to do short. And for the second one, we have long, and we're telling it to be in Japanese. And here is the example of that as it's shown. Okay, let's talk number formatting. So same thing with number formatting. Different countries have different currencies. Different countries have different percents and decimals and how they handle math. So the i18n Vue plugin automatically takes care of that for you. You can set those as standard and be able to use those in any format you want. So again, this is an example of how to implement this in your template. And again, notice that we're not using $T anymore. We're using $N. Same situation with $D for date. With $N, you're actually formatting numbers. Now, again, you can pull in a component and do the component, or you can use the squiggly brackets and put those in there, or squiggly boys. I know that's some people online use squiggly boys. I like that one better. But anyway, so you can specify your numbers to be whatever you want. You don't necessarily have to convert all of your numbers over to that specific currency or percent or decimal. You can have the Vue i18n plugin do it for you. So here's how that turns out. And it'll automatically change the symbols as well. So obviously, $ isn't universal. So let's talk scope. Scope and locale changing. So we have two different examples of how to change your internationalization in your app. You have global and you have your local. So this is an example of how that actually works. So you have your global scope, and then you have your local scope, which is compared down to components. Now you can implement the Vue i18n plugin at a global scale, like I showed, or you can actually do it at a local scope and just do it for single components. You don't have to do it for everything. For us at Garmin, we actually translate our applications that we run into 64 different languages and regions. It's a lot. We also use an app called Contentful, a content management system, to do that for us and to manage all of our data. And it already has internationalization built in. So when we query to get those that internationalization data, all we have to do is pass the locale and it'll automatically give us all the data for that locale. We're not going and grabbing every data for every region of every country, of every city, of everything. We're not doing that. We're only going to be grabbing the pertinent information. So in order to change the global scope, we have this $root. We tell i18n to change locale and we just equal it to whatever we want. Or if you're doing the local, you can just do $i18n and locale and change the locale there and it'll automatically do it for you. So a couple optimization things. First off is lazy loading. Rather than loading all the translations at once, implementing lazy loading to translations dynamically only when they are needed, or it changes dynamically only when they're needed, excuse me. This reduces the initial bundle size and improves loading times, especially for large applications with intensive translation files. Like I said, at Garmin, we have a ton of different languages that we support. Next up is caching and memorization. So caching frequently accessed translations and memorize translation functions to avoid unnecessary computation. Obviously, you don't want a bunch of stuff in there that isn't necessary. So we're going to go ahead and cache some of that. Component level optimization. So the usage at the component level by selectively translating only the necessary content within each component. So like I said, the local scope versus the global. And then lastly, we have our code splitting and tree shaking. So utilizing code splitting and tree shaking techniques to optimize the size of your related code, splitting your code into smaller chunks and removing unused translations during the build process helps reduce the overall bundle size, resulting in faster load times and improved performance of your Vue apps. And my favorite thing about this Vue i18n plugin is that it's automatically built into the dev tools. Very similar to the way that Pina is already built into the dev tools. So when you install it, it'll automatically add another little tab. You'll be able to pick the global scope or the local scope based on whatever component that you're looking at. And then you're actually able to see all the different formats and currencies, decimals, percents, basically anything you want. You can drill down and be able to pick it out. So, in summary, we have our global reach. The whole goal of building applications and websites is for people to use them, right? This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to open up our doors and get as many users and as many people and inform as many people as possible. And by implementing i18n into your applications, you're actually achieving that. The second thing is the user experience. Obviously, you want your users to have a great experience while you're using your app, but if they don't speak your language and you've only built it for English, that puts them as the responsible person to learn English and then be able to use your app. There's a reason why English-based apps are not exactly popular all over the world. Thirdly, cultural sensitivity. There are definitely issues when it comes to cultural sensitivity about translating information. Some things translate into different languages that mean different things. So you want to be sensitive to those people. And like I said, it's an accessibility issue and everybody has the right to be able to see your content. And lastly, legal compliance. This can actually get you in big, big trouble, especially in Asia or Europe, where they have a lot of legal compliances that you have to go through. Now, I personally don't know of any of them at Garmin that we have to deal with. I know they're there. I know we have lawyers, and I know that we have to work with them in order to get our legal compliance up to code. But there's a very, very big risk that you could be sued for your application if it's popular enough, if you don't have natural language supported in your apps. So with that, I'm going to keep it short and brief. I know it's been a long day. This is my talk. Thank you guys very much. Like I said, my slides are up here if you want to take photos of them. Links at jdhillen.com. If you have any questions, I'll be around all day tonight, all day tomorrow. I'd love to talk to you guys about this stuff. And yeah, come talk to me. Let's go get a drink.